Hallelujah, blessings in Jesus' name. So this video is a short one. I think it's important sometimes to make short and concise messages, because the devil's camp's doing it. These short little snippets and things, and the design of that is to get as much of their rhetoric and as much of their divisive, corrupting and decaying message out there to the people to influence how they behave toward one another or don't. And so in this video I just want to tell you that everything that the devil does is about separation. Listen again. It's separation under the false banner of togetherness. It's division under the facade, under the organ, subcutaneous. Division under the subcutaneous layer, covered, sheathed in the outer organ, the skin. Do you know the skin is the biggest organ in your body? So the skin being the concealing organ, the organ of concealment, the seal. What does corruption and decay do? It begins inside the body. If you want to conquer without, you must first conquer within. Have you ever heard that? That's where the devil targets. So the devil is targeting separation of people, which is what? Separation of the family unit. So anywhere that the devil is targeting, he's trying to conceal that. I just watched a short video. So whatever you're going to have with me, whatever conversation you're going to have with me, you know, the snake neck starts going, it's going to be about, we're not going to have conversations about the child. So what the devil is saying is, you don't talk about what I'm targeting. That draws attention to it. And I want you to be looking away from what I'm doing. Not discussing it, not reasoning about it, not applying logic, not making preservations and protections, not really carefully considering. We don't have that conversation. And that's best practice in his presentation. So he presents it as something that's coming from a place of genuine passion and empathy and sympathy and concern. And I've thought this through. It really has affected me, therefore I'm invested and I must care. While they're tearing it apart. So why did our forefathers, and this is very fundamental because we all need money, and economics are a tool of society. So economics are our ability to interact on a monetary level, household to household. And Satan knows that if he targets economics, he gets control. That's why he has had his Jewish travelers, his nomadic Jewish bankers, going into countries, lending money, because he would indebt the people. They would indebt the people. I just learned the other day, charging interest on a loan is usury. Used to be against the law. Why? Because it's taking more than you're giving. So it's not true value. Well, you wouldn't have the money if we didn't give it to you. That doesn't sound like a very positive, progressive way of talking. But they don't present it like that. They say, well, we have contributed to your society in a way that if we didn't receive interest, wouldn't have been a facility to us either. We have to make a living out of what we're doing for your nation. We're great philanthropists of sorts. No. And see, the thing that Jews had was good form. They keep a good house, tidy house. So that was a welcoming. That was a sort of a feature that you would welcome into your society as a ruler. Good order, good form, good teaching, good academics, good business practices apart from the core systematic takeover of the financial system to negative effect. Because those nomadic Jews were the synagogue of Satan, travelling from nation to nation to conquer them and set them up the central banks, which would compete with the national banks. lending interest to the people and therefore owning the people because they were owed money by the people. Therefore they could direct the course by directing the terms of repayment. So the goal there was, and they've been doing it over the millennia, systematically. Even the credit union in Ireland now is regulated by the central bank. What do you mean, regulated? That's not central bank money, is it? Why don't we just go to the central bank then and forget about the credit union? No, they're regulating it. They're helping the credit union do what they've been perfectly well doing prior to that involvement. We don't need the central bank's input in our credit union because that makes it something else. The credit union was people getting together to pool their resources in a way that when somebody lacked, there'd be provision for them. They wouldn't lack from laziness or just not bothering to contribute. They'd lack from injury or sickness or inability to find employment for whatever reason or unforeseen circumstances. And so they'd come together as a community, and that's what the credit union was about. A union for the purposes of credit, not the purposes of interest, gain, or the accumulation of wealth on the unfortunate circumstances of others, which would see them requiring credit. So there was no interest involved there, because interest historically was usury. U-R-Y. It was an unlawful activity, asking for interest for a loan you gave. Why? Because it would steal value from the economic system. And it was a way of enslaving the people, because even after they repaid the amount you gave them, they'd still be paying you. Yes, but they're paying for the facility. What are they facilitating, actually? They're not facilitating anything. Because you can create crises. And if off the back of crisis you create the need for credit, now you've created problems that have led people to your front door. So the Jews would go into the society, create calamitous situations that would see people showing up at their door asking for money. All under the banner of philanthropy, contribution. So our forefathers had the wisdom to see this. They had the foresight, the insight and the hindsight, because it happened before, to see we need to prevent this, we need to prevent against this, so we need to regulate against it. So we need our constitution and our laws and our statutes and our legislatures to protect us from this sort of manipulation within society. So what does Satan do? He just stops talking, he stops educating people. He rewrites history so that people don't know what to expect, what to look out for, and what to protect themselves and their children from to preserve their household, and therefore the common good. Because the common good starts with the individual household. So Satan is all about usurpation of power and control through economics. And he uses that economic advantage then to be the dismantling of the household. And then once he's dismantled the household, he starts to put bullies in place to prevent people asking questions or discussing the negative effects of separation. So he tries to conceal the negative ramifications of the division that is ensuing as a result of economic necessity. That's why it says in the Constitution of Ireland, under the family unit, the government must endeavour to ensure. They don't even have the conversation nowadays in Ireland, but it says that they must endeavour to ensure that it never be as a result of economic necessity that a woman leaves the household and goes to work. She should never have to go to work because her husband isn't earning enough. If he's working full time, the government should ensure that he has enough to pay for his household. And so they put it in the heads of the women, the hearts of the young girls, that in order to be valid as a woman, you need to be contributing to the household monetarily. So he targets the youth because they're naive, they're gullible, they're new. They don't have the experience of education, the advantage of education, the privilege of knowing what actually occurred in history to prevent against it happening again. And they don't have access to their daddy to tell them, or to have these conversations. So daddy's at work, mommy's at work now, and they only meet up the pet animals at the weekend in the petting zoo. Spend more money. So, like, some people are going to work just to keep the roof over their heads, and a standard of living, a relative standard of living, it's like you've your arm twisted behind your back to aspire to a standard of living, because nothing else is available really, unless you've time to build it yourself and the skills. And because of the types of employment nowadays, people are largely de-skilled, because it's a lot of computers, a lot of accounting, a lot of solicitor work, a lot of bar work, a lot of stuff that isn't really homesteading craft and skill. And so, like, even building craft now is a lot of prefabricated work. It's de-skilling the workforce. It's reliant upon machinery. And they'll always make excuses for that. Oh yeah, it's because of the increase in population. We have to build the houses faster, and you have to have these systems where we can quickly do it. Oh well, why then do we not have enough houses? You're solving that problem with technology. No, remember, they're always trying to constrict and constrain your progress as a household, and put undue and unnecessary, because they could be avoided with proper practice and the implementation of systems we know already that work. So they're progressing all right, but they're progressing into what they know is a broken system that destroys the family. If you want to call that progress, you can. You can progress down the stairs, or you can progress up it. We're moving forward either way, but one is to the climb and one is to the descent. So if you want to climb and ascend as a nation, you have to progress in the right direction, and that's upwards. You can progress downwards if you want, and even that looks like progress, and it seems easy for a while because you're descending. You're not resisting the heights. You know? But when you properly climb up to the top of the stairs, then you can rest when you reach it. And just maintain. But they don't let you do that, because that's not in their interest, and it doesn't do what Satan has tried to do, historically and all throughout time. Decay, corrupt and divide, which is what? The decomposition of the body. That's what happens to your physical body when you die. It rots. It decays, corrupts, and is what? Decomposed. Divided. The cell divides. The enzymes break it down. The bacteria take over. Parasites set in. All sorts of stuff. Consume it. But a lot of this happens under the surface of the skin, under the concealment and the facade of the outer skin. And a body that's decomposing can actually look intact for quite some time before it's too late and corruption has set in completely, and now it's visible. So what we have to do as Christians is expose this, and that's why they put us in prison and make us look like the oddball. Of course we're going to look like the oddball because most people are conforming to their nonsense, because they either don't know any better, or they've just made the decision to just go along to get along and take what appears to be the path of least resistance. But ultimately it's not the path of least resistance, because you're leading your family into economic poverty, into moral and cultural poverty. Because you can't police what the creche is teaching your child. And if the actual syllabus, see what they're doing now, they're trying to take over the creches. Creches are saying, we want your contributions, this is not fair, we'll have to shut our doors if the government don't give us money, and then ask us to, as a result of taking that money, do what they tell us to do and teach what they tell us to teach. And yay, now we don't have to shut down, but we've become little factories of immoral children, thinking that evil is good and good is evil. And that's where the devil is targeting. He's targeting the creches. And why would he impoverish them so that he can give them money? Because with the money comes stipulations. Yes, we'll give you the grant, but it's just a matter of all of your ethics and moral fibre being thrown out with the next rubbish. And that's how they operate. So they divide. They send daddy to work, then they don't pay him enough. That's where they start. They start by not paying daddy enough. and they blame crisis. What did they do? The last tiger, they overlent. That was on purpose. It was the central bank, the Jewish bank. It's been travelling around sabotaging nations for a long, long time. They send them around to loan money that people can't pay back, and they know it. And the intention of that, and if they didn't know it, they're incompetent and never should have had money to lend in the first place. So they give people money, people who are naive and gullible and don't have experience in life and haven't had the schooling or the edification or the teaching or the impartation of wisdom to help them to not make those mistakes financially. Go and say, I can have a house, I can get 200,000, I'll take it. So they're relying on the ignorance of the peoples to overlend them so that the interest that they have to pay back is something that's insurmountable to them. They can't pay it back. They don't have that facility. And any banker who passed their first year of exams would know, plus and minus, these people aren't going to be able to pay this back. And if they didn't, what were they at? You see, people on the front end, people at the end user end, were being given bonuses to lend people money. So they'd monetarily incentivize the overlending of money. That's not normal. That's not advantageous to any money lending organisation, to give money after money, good money after bad. So it was never about the money, and the money was only ever monopoly money anyway, literally. It's just money they printed for the purposes of taking over nations. They don't have any right to do it. It's not legal tender, really, because it's not of the nation that they're trying to occupy and overthrow. It's sedition through economics. So what they're ultimately doing is they're ultimately overlending to people, which is usury, and it's actually grand larceny when they're knowingly doing it in a way that takes over the economics of an entire state. It's actually sedition and treason. It's actually a militarized, mobilized attack through economics. You don't see it coming because it's just these really well-living Jews who keep their grass cut and they're nice to the neighbours, who are overlending to people and taking over the country. So it's very easy for them to remain hidden because they're not like robbing your wallet. They're just taking the contents of it and its true value away from you. See the point? So they are basically pickpockets, but they're educated pickpockets who pretend to use established systems properly. But they're thieves, basically mobsters, gangsters, with a bit of an acumen, an intellect, an IQ and an education. But they're basically thugs. But they've dressed up as gentlemen and talked with an accent and mowed the lawn and clipped the hedge. That's all. So Satan is all about creating the divisions first, creating the separation by the utilization or the misuse of economics. Then he's about setting bullies in place within the media, within the social platforms of discussion, to bully people into feeling, oh, that's not socially acceptable to talk about the child anymore. What? Parents can't talk about their children? Fathers who have been abandoned by their significant other can't inquire about their child to see how they're doing? Well, of course that would be in the interest of the devil, because he doesn't want the father of the house, the head of the household, to actually have the endowment of the realization of the power and authority that comes with that position for the safeguarding of his children. Satan is a mongrel. He's a thug and a scumbag. He's a behind-the-wall thief who tries to emasculate the man, remove him as the head of the household, and then puts loud-mouthed women who are heavily demonized, witches of covens of Freemasonry and Eastern Star, to bully people while they pretend to be passionate and well-doing and caring, into not inquiring about their own children. So they try to create these social norms which are antithetical to the common good. by sort of passive-aggressive or very subtle bullying tactics. I would really rather if you didn't come near me right now, please. See, it's just under the surface sort of aggression and a threat. A little gritting of the teeth, even that much, see, that communicates it just as well, doesn't it? It doesn't have to be like that, it can be just like this. I'd rather if you didn't do that right now, thanks. See how much more nuanced that is, how much more subtle it is, concealed. But it's still stated, very subtle, and subtly. And that's what God said. Satan is subtle. So he's the one operating in these people who are standing on the front line. He's the one hopping around them, and his demons, well-trained demons as well, who he's trained to franchise out what he does and copy what he does. They do what they see their father, the devil, doing. And so anybody who goes away to his body takes on his spirit. The Bible says he's the spirit operating in the children of disobedience. So they start to do what he does and what they see him doing. And that's how Satan goes about dividing. That's why it says in the Constitution of Ireland, and any well-doing and well-understanding constitution from men with insight and education, foresight and hindsight of true history, not the refabricated, remolded pretense that they call history, which is his story, the devil's remake. So ultimately, what we're doing as Christians is exposing that evil for the edification of people so that they know what's coming and that it's not new. Satan's been doing it for yonks throughout the ages, but now it's your turn. So you've got to protect your family and push the devil out. And it says to your government, gainful employment has to be afforded to the man in Ireland because it's part of the Constitution of Ireland. And if you're not even having the conversation, that says that you're working for the devil, because if you were working for the people, you'd be at least discussing the Constitution and the requests and the orders and the authority that they have over you as their government. You would be coming to them and discussing what they have asked you to afford them, as the ones who pay your wages. And another short video I watched the other day was about, we shouldn't be having a conversation about anything but taxes. See, so these people want you focused on the things that are parasitically extracting all of the retainable wealth from the household, because they don't want you to have any wealth apart from that which the state is dishing out. Even though the state is the one being given money by you, your taxes is what the money is the only money the state has. And if it has any other money, it's because it's printing it, and it's involved in the society in ways that it shouldn't be, to avoid the types of corruption that ensue when they are involved in business instead of just governance of the state and taxes. Because now they have split interests. So what are they going to favour? Their interest in business or their interest in performing their duties for the state as president or as a politician or as any member of any office of the organs of state, any official? What are they going to prioritise? It's like having a Freemason who's a policeman or a guard. Well, are they going to favour their Freemasonic beliefs and their view for society Freemasonically? Or are they going to obey the office and do the duties that the people have given them the authority to carry out? Which are they going to prioritise? Are they going to use that office and misuse it to extend a satanic, because Freemasonry is Satan's worship of Satan, and it actually houses those Jews that we spoke about, who are the central bank, who are lending to people in a way that indebts them to them for the removal of any retainable wealth from the nation, for the purposes of control and overthrow, for the ultimate implementation of divisive strategies. So it's, don't give daddy enough money, mommy has to go to work. There's a separation. You're separating mommy from the home. which is what? Separating mommy from the children. It's not so much the home, that's brick and mortar. It's separating her from the children. They go off somewhere. Where do they go? Into the devil's hands. Into his sharp, spindly fingers. You see the point? So then he starts saying, don't talk about the child. You see, once he has them where he wants them, then he tries to assert his position. Like somebody who takes the money and then puts their elbow over it. You see? Or the dog that growls over the bowl. Satan is a dog. And the worst of them. He's pack leader. And he leads from the hedge. He's a hider. So, the only time he goes in is when the victory's had. He's a coward. He's a vulture. So, the point is this, that one, he tries to separate the family, number one. Secondly, he tries to assert his position once he's done so. But he does so in a way that's hiding down behind the hedge, hiding behind the door. He hides behind a pretty soft-featured woman who has a little bit of an attitude problem. And that little bit of a percussiveness in her voice, that staccato, is what? It's a bully tactic. Don't you talk about... See, if a big muscle man looked like a WWF wrestler went out and started banging his chest saying, men, you better not talk to your children, what sort of response do you think he'd get? They might start banging their chests as well. So the point is that the devil doesn't do that. He's behind the door and he's a sidewinding, flanking snake that tries to go into your peripheral to be out of your sight. So what he does is he sends a pretty soft-featured woman who has a masculine spirit. And she's not shouting at a man, she's shouting at the woman. Why? Because you won't get the same reaction from the man. So she's shouting at the woman, telling the woman that the man can't ask the questions. So now the woman is thinking, well, this pretty woman has the attention of all the people around, because the devil makes them insecure. This pretty woman, she has the attention of the people here. If I want to be socially accepted, I have to consider what this woman is saying and take her seriously. And maybe other women will look to me as strong if I do what this woman says, because they see her as strong. Because now this woman is insecure because she doesn't have the presence of the man because they're separated. So the devil understands all of these dynamics and is manipulating and exploiting all of them. Because division creates more opportunity for the devil to do harm. So he exploits every divisive opportunity that comes on the back of the initial division or separation. So he's just trying to drive that wedge. And a wedge, what? Gets worse as it goes in. It gets bigger, the separation gets bigger as the wedge goes through. Because why? Because separation allows for more divisive tactic and strategy the further apart people get. And that's the wedge. So he just goes in, tries to drive his wedge. So it's bullies, it's social manipulation, playing on people's insecurities that have come about as a result of this separation, because ultimately a woman wants a man there as her protector and her provider. And that's why Satan emasculates them, because now the woman no longer looks at the man as her protector or provider. He removes the ability for the man to provide by removing gainful employment, which is a fair day's pay. Now he's fallen short, so the woman can't see him as provider because he's not providing, even though he intends to, and he's well capable of doing so in terms of the manual labour and his acumen and his willingness. There's nothing lacking in the man. What's lacking is the amount he's being paid. And that's the Jewish involvement. That's the satanic involvement. That's the Freemasonic involvement. That's the central bank's involvement. So gainful employment has to be a priority. Gainful employment of the man is the starting point that removes the devil from having his yappy bill involved in any of the discussion. Because he's just a yappy dog. A yappy dragon. Throwing accusations and muck at everybody and taking advantage of every fallout and every bad situation, and he's a scumbag. So the reality of the situation is that when the government fails to provide gainful employment to the man, that's when the man needs to step up and say, gainful employment or no workers. Gainful employment or no taxes. Gainful employment or you have no job, President. Gainful employment or you have no job, government. Gainful employment or we start chopping down the trees and making our own houses. Gainful employment or people start to obey God because the government have not. Work with your hands so that when you have done so, you have something to give your neighbour in need. That's gainful employment. You can't give to your neighbour in need if you haven't got enough yourself. So gainful employment is necessary for charity, for philanthropy, for benevolence. But what does Satan do? He tries to take control of benevolent organisations to remove that ability from others, saying that need is filled. So he steps into philanthropy and he uses it as his facade to hide behind. Do you see? So people have to say to the government, if you do not give us gainful employment, you are sacked. We don't want your handouts. We want a fair day's pay. Where are you getting these handouts anyway? You're only giving us back our own money. We want the job that pays us. We want a proper economic system and framework in society that is conducive to the security of the steadfast, of the homestead, of the family shelter and unit itself, for the provision of the togetherness of the people and the good counsel, edification and the bringing up of the nations in proper wisdom and in proper order. But they tried to claim all of those things as their own. You can have all those things, but it's just a matter of your soul. You get the sole of my shoe in the back of your cart on your way out of town. That's what you'll get. Because ultimately, what you have to do is take control of your country, or they will. Where does it start? Gainful employment. Gainful employment. Gainful employment. For the man. Now the woman nor the man have it. They're both working now. The child's at the creche. And the creche is so expensive that they might be coming out €30 better off a week. But Satan and his manipulators, his financiers, Minister for Finance, talking about the money for the education. What do? They sit around and carefully calibrate. We want to separate them, but we can't allow them accumulate wealth as a result of the woman's employment, or we'll be back to square one. Because then she'll be able to stop working for a time, or at least maybe 6 months of the year. No, we have to keep her at work, so we can't pay her gainful employment either. So now, instead of the man having gainful employment, neither of them do, but they're both working. And then we'll send the woman or the children to creche, and then we'll impoverish the creches, so they come to us looking for grants. And then once we've given them grants, we'll start telling them what to teach. So we'll get into the heads of the little children. And then they'll be the adults one day, and we'll have poisoned their minds, so they'll be even less knowing than their parents were. We're making them more vulnerable to us. That's what the devil's all about. So our forefathers knew this. They've seen him in action before. But you're losing the benefit of their experience because your government, your current government, who are Freemasons, aren't, including your president, Michael D. Higgins, he's a Freemason. They're not, because a Freemason told me when I was one. So I left Freemasonry as soon as I found out it was devil worship, and was sure of that. So the point is that they tried to drive home that advantage for the purposes of dividing. The advantage being the debt that they place you in by failing to give the man gainful employment. That's your first and final defence, actually. Your first defence economically is your final defence. Once they get in through your front door, you're gone. Unless you quickly take back the reins and put them out of a job. It's the only way to do it. Or you're gone, your house is gone. And then they start sending their busybodies into society to bully people, to remain in separation. Do you see? So gainful employment, as it's enshrined in the Irish Constitution, has to be given to the man. No more excuses. That's the attitude you should have. Blessings in Jesus' name.